All right, we are live today for the RTD Q&A, and I'm excited to bring to you today's guest. And so I've had a great opportunity to connect with Paul several times now, and the goal is to have Paul Stoneham, the CEO and founder of Colonial Metals Group, join us today to share his thoughts on current market activity as well as precious metals, as well as different strategies that people can implement for their retirement portfolios. And so today happens to be a special day because we have the presidential debate. And so definitely we're going to touch on that and share some thoughts and analysis around the subject matter that will not be covered. And definitely looking forward to connecting with Paul. And so let me bring him on the screen here. Paul Stone, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Great to be back. Great to see you. How are you?
I'm doing excellent, and excited to connect as I just mentioned. And so it's been a minute since I've done the RTD Q&A portion where I get a chance to have you and the audience connect in real time. And hopefully we'll get a couple good questions in here in reference to whatever subject matter people may want to know from you directly. And so it's always good to connect with the experts and to just, see what's just get some real feedback. So looking forward to doing that. And so, as always, for those who are plugging in, definitely let me know where you're watching from in the chat. I'll do my best to try to get to the chat. Sometimes I get carried away with questions and things like that. And as always, looking forward to just getting the feedback from the viewer. So let me know if you haven't hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you click the bell notification as well as the Rumble check mark if you guys want to be notified when we do go live in the future. But here we are now. It's Thursday. June 27th, and got the American flag behind us just because of the presidential debate. And clearly that's a hot topic for a lot of people because of it's that season. And so I'm curious to get your thoughts on that. And so I know some things that they will not be talking about, and it has to do with gold and silver. But based upon just all the noise or rhetoric going on, I guess what are some things that you perhaps might think of this matter, or where do you stand in reference to this current season?
Well, as far as the options that we have to vote for this November, um, like I think we all wish that we had something with a bit more vibrance to choose from.
Mhm.
But we do have a great example set of the two different camps. And I keep thinking when folks say, "Well, Trump's this or Trump's that," Trump's a competitor. So before anything, he's had to compete in a world, in the real estate world, high end real estate world, where things can go bust and you end up with nothing. And maybe he runs a dry cleaners chain for the rest of his life because the real estate thing didn't work. In that political world where Biden hails from, you can have tons of times at bats. Look at Romney as an example. He was, I guess, governor of Massachusetts, if I have that right, and then he's a senator in Utah. Or Hillary Clinton, she could be a president's wife and then be the secretary of state and then a senator. So political careers can go on and on and on forever. Business careers sometimes don't. And so when you look at how the componentry, if you will, to Donald Trump versus Biden, Trump has a bottom line. He has employees. He has to lead contractors and lead projects, and he has to interact financially with those projects, with those who supply capital to them. And he's proud of what he's achieved, right? And we can say, well, he's bombastic or difficult, but he's competitive. And when we look at our country, it isn't very competitive. And the other camp seems to represent, let's not compete. Let's just be the same as everyone else, or not try to strive for anything. So I see this. That's what I see these two candidates representing. And tonight we're also going to see a bit more on what they're capable of and not capable of when it comes to answering questions, speaking.
Right, I do agree, and that's one of the things where given out again, it's just so much divide and just so much stuff going on. It's hard to focus on everything at the same time, and so primarily focusing on monetary issues, and in particular, gold and silver, especially with silver as of late, has been something I've really been trying to drive home, just because it's just such a great opportunity for people to still be able to grab a hold of, given all the attention that's been given to it now out in the Eastern Hemisphere with the whole Shanghai futures and things of that nature. So eventually, I don't know when, and this has been going on for quite some time now, the manipulation in the markets, but at some point it has to break. And when it breaks, there'll be no return to any type of normalcy. But then again, I think one of the things that's kept it from actually breaking happens to be the allure of the digital asset realm. And so as of late, we've had, President Trump. He's been very, I guess, now on the Bitcoin train. And so now he's talking about joining or going to the convention in July to just show his support. And he did a little speech talking about, making Bitcoin miners, mining all Bitcoins here in the U.S. And then all of a sudden, we had Biden. He flip-flopped and apparently he's putting together a team to study this mining, this Bitcoin stuff. And so coincidental, accidental, what are your thoughts? Or is this like a diversion tactic to keep people's attention away from the shiny things, or what?
Yeah, it's got to be a strategic. Speaking of, Bitcoin at the moment, there aren't too many that still remain yet to be mined. I'm not an expert. No, I don't even care necessarily to spend too much time understanding all the T's and C's that surround cryptocurrency or Bitcoin, but I understand enough to know that what the differences are between that and gold and silver and traditional banking. And when we look at the proposal long ago where Bitcoin started, right? It was used to conduct transactions on the dark web. It was autonomous money. It was supposed to be money that no one knew you had or did transaction in, and the authorities wouldn't know that those transactions were happening. Now, the blockchain technology is incredible, but speaking up for the positives of Bitcoin, will a company ever do payroll in Bitcoin? You ever going to go buy a car in Bitcoin, finance a home in Bitcoin? To me, that's very murky and unclear, because how could your paycheck be $8,000, this month, and that's worth $9,000 in a couple of weeks? It's worth $6,200 a few weeks after that. Mm-hmm. I don't know how anyone could plan or have a stability in their life using Bitcoin to replace the dollar. I do think the Federal Reserve will be replacing the dollar with a federally issued cryptocurrency down the road. Mm-hmm. And I know there's a lot of people that stand up against that. I am one of those. I am frightened about what that would lead to should the government have that much control.
Right. And I am somewhat of a skeptic myself. And so I'm very outspoken against the whole CBDC narrative. And so I often show just the CBDC map, where every country is working on something at different phases, of course. And of course, because we have the reserve currency status as of now, I'm curious to get your thoughts on that and all the talks about the petrodollar having ended because of the agreement, and want to get your thoughts next. But, because of the CBDC being something that, every government is working towards, it's often looked at as just a surveillance mechanism beyond what we already have. And then the fact that, with the Bitcoin protocol being pretty much open, public ledger type of opportunity. So either way, all eyes can see transactions. And so it's one of those things where that doesn't resemble like the idea of having physical cash, where at least you can exchange cash hand to hand and still have some type of anonymity. But, having, whether it be Bitcoin or CBDCs, there's eyes that are able to see. And that to me is what bothers me most, because all of this talk in our political realm about making Bitcoin legal tender and all these things like that is like, okay, I never hear them mention gold or silver with the same level of excitement, and they'll never talk about the privacy coin type thing as well, because I guess that's forbidden. And so to me, they run hand in hand in a sense. And so that's something that I'm really concerned with. But moving forward with the CBDCs, do you think that it will come as a result of something breaking, or rolled out in unison with the stable coins that are also associated with the digital asset realm, or what?
I think people need to find a good way of viewing that. They need to look at, what does currency actually do, right? Currency moves the economy forward. It's the conduit upon which action can happen. Commercial action can happen, right? Commerce. Without it, it's, well, I have 6 eggs and I need, my dining room set refinished, so you're doing trade. Currency allows us to say, well, we all know what the thing is worth, so the pricing of things happens in that currency, and now transactions can happen because of the currency. If the currency ends up worthless, like a set of tires on your vehicle, you come out and you're looking and you see little metal threads sticking up through where the tread used to be, you're down to the steel belt radial. and the tread is gone, long gone. So your journey, your commercial journey, can no longer continue much further, because eventually you'll have 4 flat tires and now you're stuck and can't go anywhere. So we have to retread those tires. The government has printed the dollar to death. Today it's worth 3 cents. It used to be worth 100, less than 100 years ago. In the year 2000, it was worth 56 cents, just to give you an idea of how fast we're racing towards the bottom. So currency change would happen because you need to refresh the tread, if you will, on your tires to carry your financial vehicle another 100 years. So if that makes sense, then you can start to understand why it's happened so many times in human history. Currency change is normal. You just have to wait 50, 60, 70 years to see it happen in your lifetime. Nixon was a currency change. Not using gold as money in 1933 was currency change. So this would be the third in less than 100 years. The last point to understand is it's not an analog currency we're going toward. The government isn't at the mesh point of you swiping your card. Visa is, MasterCard is, some banks are, the merchant is, right? Your bank account, they're all in a big conversation. How much is asked for? This much? Is that much available? Yes, boom, there's a handshake and the transaction's done. The government isn't there. They can be there later on when reporting happens on what the purchases were all about. But with a federally issued crypto dollar, the federal government is at the mesh point of that transaction, because as that transaction is being asked to happen, data can be filed back to the Federal Reserve or the federal system to approve or decline that transaction. So imagine they can't get Congress, I'll end with this, they can't get Congress to act in a way they want on gun control. So the executive order is just that Bitcoin will not transact for ammo or weaponry for the next 180 days. Mm-hmm. So you go to swipe screw the government, you go to swipe out and get some ammo, and it just declines because the government money and their policy is at the terminal where you would swipe that card, and the transaction can't happen. Let the Supreme Court challenges come. But if you put ammo and gun sales on a shelf for 6 months or a year, you might cause the manufacturers to go out of business. But that's an example of how the executive branch would have enormous power over you and your money.
Now, out of curiosity, there's somewhat of a movement taking place. And so on the screen here, North Carolina is one of the more recent states that's putting a bill on the table in hopes of the government the governor signing that will ban CBDC within the state. And so if that's the 4th or 5th state that's taking this type of action here, do you think the states will have the ability to really, I guess, take charge of their financial practices for the citizens as well as for their state operations, if the CBDC bill is actually brought to fruition and they're not, using the state there, and if there is some type of event, then what will the states use? That's what bothers me, because as of right now, it looks like a good effort, but will it be enough in time to get done in time?
I can certainly see certain states causing certain websites to not be accessible on the internet if the request for that website happens within the state's borders. Mm-hmm. Pornography, for example. But what I don't understand, it's a beautiful effort, and I love the spirit of the states that go ahead and spend their time passing rules and laws like these, is, well, how then do we pay our federal income tax? Because if the money of the land is a federally issued crypto dollar, just like the law of the land today is the federally issued dollar, we have to pay our income tax, or merchants have to pay any taxes, right? Wouldn't that have to be done in Fed coin? And so you're pitting the states against the centralized federal government, which the Constitution originally prescribed for the states to have enormous power over the federal government. Mm-hmm. Today, that's not the case. Mainly because they have a supply of money, right? The federal government has a supply of money that they didn't have long ago. So I don't know how you keep digital money from being utilized by citizens in a state when it's a federal land, it's federal money. It's a federally issued dollar that carries through all 50 states. I love the spirit of their action. I don't think it would stop the federal government from pushing through into the utilization of their federally issued cryptocurrency. And it would cause one hell of a fight, perhaps before the Supreme Court. It might be one of those things that eventually start to bring our country back to us. I do think, though, and in a larger way, and I'll end with this, what you're seeing is the masterpiece coming unglued. America as a masterpiece, a collage of races and creeds with a prescription for doing well together and living in harmony amongst each other. You're seeing that masterpiece that peaked many, many, many decades ago crumbling. And this is a literal fight for states to say, screw you, we're not going to allow your crazy money in our borders. And the citizenry being stuck between two worlds of perhaps not getting along with the federal government if they're not paying their income tax kind of thing. And the states are now going to defend their citizens. It's one hell of a dogfight that is getting set up that we might be in over the next couple of years.
Right, I do agree. And so, that's just, one angle from the digital side of things, but also I do follow the sound money side. And so the Sound Money Defense League, which is an organization that helps individual states actually work on improving, knowledge as well as getting, sound money back into the hands of the people. And there's been some states now that have decided to, I guess, protect their own state treasured funds in gold and silver. So here on the map here is actual states that have progressed with some very serious bills that are very favorable to gold and silver, whether it be removing the state tax, the capital gains tax in those states, and things of that nature. So there is a sound money movement going on right now that is appearing to trump the whole digital side of things. And so hopefully between now and God forbid something really, happens, that, more people wake up to the importance of gold and silver. And that's why I continue to plug along and try to educate people on the importance of having gold and silver, and of course, connect with you and have you on to share your expertise and knowledge. And so, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But one thing that we will not expect to hear tonight, during the debate is what we start out talking about, is anything about gold and silver, but it will be something about the CBDCs and the Bitcoin movement. So, but yeah, as far as those states that are pushing forward, what are your thoughts on that?
For every action, there's a reaction. Mm-hmm. And an object that's in motion tends to stay in motion, stay on that path. When you look at what the Democrats represent and their challenges and the nasty comments they've made about the viability and future existence of individually issued cryptocurrencies, whether it's Ethereum or Litecoin or Bitcoin as an example, though the government does seem to be considering that those currencies stand in the way of its own issued currency, the federally issued cryptocurrency. And that's one of the things I think people need to watch out for. I think most folks look at these coins as an investment that just goes higher, right? You would never come home and tell your spouse, honey, I invested $100,000 in the dollar. What? I don't understand. Well, I invested it in the currency, So when we talk about investing in a currency and it's going to rise higher in value, I don't know if we're actually thinking of it as a currency that we would use at the grocery store, on a macro level, like everywhere, every day, all the time.
Right.
We're thinking of something that just goes higher. Well, gold and silver absolutely has a track record of going higher during tough times. And it certainly has a track record of going higher during the money printing times. Again, when we say the dollar's 56 cents in the year 2000, gold was $300 and debt was $4 trillion. Today, $34 trillion debt, the dollar's worth 3 cents and gold is $2,300 an ounce. And you look for that viability and the longevity of that versus some new technological issuance, and we don't even know who invented it. Most people invent something as popular as blockchain, come to the podium and take credit for it. No one even knows who created it. Right. And if there are a group of people out there that did, wow, look at the humility that they don't come forward and take credit for their blockchain creation and the issuance of Bitcoin. So the Democrat Party does seem to be against your rights and does seem to be against your freedom and does seem to be against us having choices in currencies that we want to use to do things with. Trump represents the opposite of that. Trump represents the spirit and creativity of the human being, Reagan spoke a great deal about that. It's incredible what a human being is capable of when they're unleashed, not when they're leashed and shackled to rules and regs and oppressive actions by a massive government. And when Reagan spoke of shrinking the government, payroll back when Reagan was president was $75 billion a year. The whole government, DOD included, $75 billion a year. Today, it's $1.4 trillion a year in payroll, just payroll. And now the interest on the debt that these retards have created is as much as our military budget for the year, which is around $800 billion. So the interest and the retards in the government, 1.4 trillion, 2.2 trillion a year, every year, interest and the employees. And I don't mean to speak personally about anyone. I'm talking about the outcome of their choice making as a group, as a failed enterprise, if you will.
Right. And to even add to that just a little bit, I was going to definitely talk about that. But as you can see here on the screen here, the CBO's recent adjustment up to where it looks like we're going to touch $2 trillion dollar deficit this year. So like we're only halfway through the year. So, and this is far, so this is, not even including any type of, recession type narratives or any type of events to take place. And so, yeah, the spigot will eventually be turned back on as a result of all this.
What about this one, though? When you say we're not even in, I know, look at this, though. I don't mean to step on you, but you say we're not even talking about a recession. What is GDP, which is your financial product revenue, right, for the country for the year? What is GDP growth all these years since 2008 without any printed money? It's a negative number. We're literally shrinking every year. Our country's economy shrinks every year without printed money, which I would call 16 years of now a depression. And so when you look at this deficit, 2 trillion, we're only halfway through the year. Yeah, these are the things you see when you're failing miserably. This election in November is ultra important because the failure is not preventable. If you think it is, you don't need precious metals. If you think it is not preventable, it's going to continue to worsen. You need precious metals because when your monies leave whatever they're in now, they leave some kind of manufactured world. Gold and silver isn't that, right? There's only so much of it on the earth. We're only going to find so much of it. 70% of the earth is covered by an ocean, so no one's really looking for it on the ocean floor, right? So it's a very limited, scarce, valuable commodity that the world, the human race, considered money up until 1971. For the thousands of years we've been here arguing about this or that, gold and silver was money or it backed the money until 1971. The human race has now lived in a printed world, financial world, for the last 53 years. This is a video game. People have to wake up and go, oh my God, look what the choices are for president in a few months. And oh my God, look at how terrible the government is at making things run well. I've got to insulate myself from what's coming around the corner by relocating my savings into something real that I own, that's as liquid as a phone call, and I can carry around with me if I had to.
Yes, 100%. And so, like while you're talking, I'm thinking about just this number here. I've never seen this number slow down, stop, or go in reverse, and that is also plays into why the game can't stop, and so it has to go on. And along the way, people who hold the actual currency in of itself will be the casualties of this event. And I want to touch on real quick what something I also pay attention to. And so just yesterday, the Fed test, the bank test. And so this is from CNN. This is even more concerning when CNN is willing to put something like this. But it says the biggest U.S. banks are more vulnerable than they were last year. Fed stress tech shows. And we all know what happened in March of 2023. And so if they're telling us that the banks are in even worse condition, then that also adds on to the layer of things that you've hinted at that could be a problem as to why getting something physical, getting something real and tangible, the click-clack in your hand might be something worthwhile. But the banking event that everybody sees coming or is anticipating coming. So actually having your currency inside institutions will be problematic. And so being able to actually take possession of plays into a lot of what your service makes available for people. So share with us a little bit on how, I guess, this self IRA situation plays out to where people can potentially ease and minimize some of the risk if they consider their options?
It's, I have a very dear friend who's passing on and has been dealing with pancreatic cancer for 3.5 years.
Hmm.
The story is that it starts obviously in the pancreas, eventually it spreads everywhere. So, whatever is attached to the financial body that the government keeps putrefying and poisoning with its choice making, that image you just had on the debt clock, that's your government at work. That's them solving problems. The increase, that number just keeps increasing, is the government's approach to solving our country's problems. So it doesn't matter if we removed my friend's arm or leg. There's no way to extract the cancer from the body. But if we could take the lifeblood of our own financial savings, we can relocate that savings to an entirely different body outside of the one that is struggling with this cancer, which I don't really like using as an analogy, but to me, it's a very serious and fitting visualization. And I know many of your listeners and everyone watching today has either dealt with cancer themselves or witnessed someone or experienced someone who has.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you have to try to understand what gold and silver is. If you've ever seen one of those street signs at the end of the pavement where it says end of state maintenance and it turns into a dirt road, that's your finances in gold and silver. You've left this cancered body behind, but you get to come back anytime you wake up in the morning, super excited about how things have improved. You get to come racing back out of gold and silver and go back on your way. You've preserved your right to choose. And I can tell you this, the government's making choices for you. Obviously, we all know this, and they aren't good ones. So as long as you want to continue on that journey, you get to. The minute you've raised your hand and said enough, then you get to leave and you come back later when you're happy to do so. That's really what gold and silver is all about.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. A great analogy. And yeah, if people really understood the severity of what's at stake here, like, nobody in our day and time have really encountered the type of things that is being forecasted. I'm hearing, like, we have Gerald Celentes out there of the world, saying the greater depression, and they're throwing out all types of very doomsday like analogies. But then again, we've experienced that in the past in our country. And so what would it look like when we get into that next era of life? We don't know, but I don't want to find out. And so that's why I continue to encourage people, take advantage of the opportunity while you still can, because at this current moment, based upon all the currency units in circulation that we still don't know the total number of, gold and silver in particular are extremely, affordable. And also, I know we have a lot of people in the community that deal with platinum and palladium. And that's one thing I don't talk about much. But from your experience, is that something that people look to, inquire about or get into at all? Or do your company recommend or even suggest opportunities in that?
Yeah, great question. Those are the other two of the four main precious metals: gold, silver, platinum, and palladium. We don't talk too much about it because neither one of those two have ever been considered money. Mm-hmm. So they don't have that heritage, that lineage, that quest by the people of the planet over the last few thousand years for gold and silver as money, and have ignored platinum and palladium. And you also look at a performance perspective. You don't see platinum and palladium doing better than precious metals during a financial crisis, a recession, a depression, of an end of reserve countries' days. And that's one thing when we say doomsday and this kind of stuff, we just need to zoom out a little further. We did not invent money. We did not invent reserve currency. We're just the ones that hold it last in line. Many countries before us had that. This idea of one currency that everything can kind of settle in from commodity pricing has been around for thousands of years, right? If you sailed up your ship into some port, you didn't have a way to price what you had on your ship was full of spices and tobacco and stuff. How do you price that if everyone's using a different currency? And so the centralized currency or reserve currency idea came, so everyone understood what they were making and what they were charging and what they were getting paid for stuff. Mm-hmm. So when you zoom out, you see that humans wrote the history of governments presiding over failure. that the human beings in the economy created what was awesome about that country, and governments prevailed over ruining it. That's the track record. So to me, it doesn't matter what century or language you're talking about. What you're talking about is reserve currencies come and go. The countries come and go. They rise and fall. And I can get into it on a longer discussion. I'll save everyone from it now. But just understand these headlines, this election, the things we're all talking about here are not indicators of an incredible sports franchise bound to win another Super Bowl. You're talking about something that literally can't even function. They can't even put a team on the field. That's what you're looking at. And your money is tied up with that enterprise. I'd say go be a ticket holder somewhere else.
Yeah. Great analogy there. Okay, so we have 30 minutes in or so. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Looks like we have about 200 plus over on Rumble and about 50 or so on YouTube. And so it's the first time I did a midday stream in a while. But for those who are plugged in, and if you have a question or a thought, an idea, something that you want to throw out to Paul, this will be the time to do that, because I can, of course, continue to ask more questions. But it's a Q&A portion where I want to give people a chance to, get some questions out there. So if you have a question, feel free to throw it at them, and definitely we'll see what we can do here. And so I do see something in the chat from up a while ago from LBP, one of the faithful community members here. I'll put it on the screen here, and it says, "What happens when states ban federal income taxes?"
Yeah, I think a lot of people are suddenly moving to that state or those states. Yeah. Yeah. That's why by design the states were to have more power. It's easier to manage something that's on a small scale, right? A governor, state, few million people live there. They deal with their own little problems that some would be unique just to that state. Something with a port like Massachusetts might have a different set of challenges than Nebraska, for example. Mm-hmm. And so I love the question. When states could stand up against this centralized, ruinous regime of our central government, that would be amazing.
So as a result of that question, I wanted to get your thoughts on Trump's recent idea of eliminating the income tax. And I guess, proposing or setting up some type of, tariff tax or VAT tax or something like that. But I know a lot of people say that might be good for the economy to get things really, spurred in the right direction. But once again, that we've never experienced that in our modern day of not having income tax. But then again, how will that play out on the other side of that equation? Have you given that thought, or is that something that you consider?
Oh, well, I'm not the most keen historian in all of the land, but and my information could be wrong, but I did pick up long ago that it was President Lincoln, that created this income tax idea to help give him a financial edge over the South. My understanding was it had a 2-year drop dead date. And when the 2-year point came and passed, they renewed it, and then they just kept it going. You bookend that idea or concept with a recent speaker at CPAC, where he said the government could just print all the money it needs and wants to spend for the year. Mm-hmm. It can. They can take the dollar's value down to 1/10 of a penny. It's currently 2.7 cents. You can go to 1/100 of a penny. You might be paying $50 for a coffee if they were to do that, but it is mathematically possible. You just wouldn't like the outcome of that in the real world on Main Street. But if you bookend the idea of what Lincoln did with the fact that the government could just print all the money that it wants to spend, he then pointed out, the speaker at CPAC, is the reason they still have income taxes so you still feel things are normal. That's quite a concept.
Right. Wow. Yeah. And one of the things that really, as I've dived deeper into this whole, subject matter, realizing that, with the government running deficits to the tune of what will be $2 trillion before the end of this year, is like, what exactly are, we paying for, because the services and, what we're paying and where the funds go, most people don't agree with or care for, or even know about. So it's like, it's a big sham in the first place. But but as always, if you don't do it, you might get a knock on the door or something worse. So out of sheer fear, people follow the script. So what else? Okay, so another question for you is in reference to the whole self-directed IRAs. And so as more people become familiar with that, start asking more questions and whatnot, based upon the way you've helped people structure their, portfolios, give us some scenarios of things that people have or are able to put into that, that basket, and then
Great.
the whole process of trying to, bring it on home in a sense.
So we're going to go back to big flare fendered cars. We're going to go back to the 70s when the IRA was born.
Mm-hmm.
When the IRA was born and Congress said, hey, let's let people save money and pay taxes on it later. The original IRA custodian was a self-directed IRA custodian, which means you could pretty much own anything inside of an IRA. You can have rental property. You could have a trailer park inside your IRA. You can trade cattle in and out of your IRA. You can have mineral rights. You can do loans out of your IRA for real estate. There's so much you could do. You can own physical gold and silver in your IRA. You could have a business in the IRA that sells gold and silver and real estate. So the original IRA was power to the people, right? You get to do what you want with that account. And the self is you. And anything that is owned in that account is titled in your name. You're not just renting space in some financial thing. You own it. Mm-hmm. So those self-directed IRA companies are still around. One of the limiting factors to the self-directed IRA by design was they weren't allowed to advertise. To my knowledge, they are not allowed to advertise. So you don't see them advertising online. And they are not allowed to borrow, lend, or invest any of their own money in anything. So by design, the construction of a self-directed IRA custodian can't get itself into different kinds of trouble that you've heard about in news headlines back in 2008 or even recently. Mm-hmm. They can't get themselves into those types of situations that cause you harm and damage your ability to keep your retirement savings intact. Your physical gold and silver is shipped into that account. So we introduce people to their options of different IRA custodians that allow physical gold and silver to be held inside your IRA. The gold and silver is then stored in a depository, and people think, well, and I'd say, well, where is it now? It's in a database, right? Your money's not around the corner at the local branch. It's in a computer. At least now it exists somewhere, and there are men and women with guns guarding it and lights out security measures, plus the depositories are insured by Lloyd's of London. You could drive over and ride off with your gold and silver if you wanted to. No one is standing between you and your money anymore. They're just standing over it and guarding it for you. Mm-hmm.
Great way of putting it. Great way of putting it. Great way of putting it. Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that, people, as I come across and I share the opportunity, people are like, Mike, but, can I actually get a hold of it? I'm like, yeah, you can. Like, you have more say so in your financial future when you choose this route or this option than you do now, because literally, as you just mentioned, it's on a ledger on somebody's screen. And it's subject to all the different counterparty risk. There's an unimaginable amount of counterparty risk between what you see when your statement come home and it shows you what you think you have compared to the market, the activity, the stock market, the bond. So, yeah, I think this is a time where people need to really reassess their total risk management skill sets and mindset, and really begin to think outside the box, basically, when it comes to monitoring their finances. So.
Absolutely. And one more point, I always want to clear this up for folks when we're talking this, in detail about individuals having gold and silver. We're not setting your finances in a set of concrete boots and throwing that off the back of a boat. You can come out of gold and silver the minute you want to. If it ends up that all your money's there in gold and silver and you got to pay bills, you liquidate a little bit of your gold and silver each month and you pay your bills. Mm-hmm. It's a store of wealth. It's a bridge over this chasm of hell beneath of us. And when we hit that cliff's edge, if you aren't already on a bridge over that chasm, then you are going down into the bottom of that crevasse, and you have to wait until things climb all the way back up the other side. If you're in gold and silver, you bridge over that troubling situation. When you're on the other side, you get to come out of gold and silver entirely and go off and do other things.
Yeah, good question. So we have a question, looks like on Rumble, from Hell Digger. He says, I'm considering liquidating my IRAs and buying gold and silver. Would I be better off paying the tax? So not financial advice, but just, I guess, as a possible scenario based upon our question there. What are your thoughts?
The beauty of keeping, and again, not a financial advisor, and this is just my experience. I'm not an accountant. But from what I've read and what I've understood, and my experience in this industry is the beauty of keeping the IRA intact is when you liquidate things inside your IRA, there is no capital gains tax. So now your IRA is just full of cash. That cash can be moved over to a self-directed IRA custodian. There's no taxes or penalties for changing up your custodian either. And then all of that cash is there to acquire physical gold and silver. If your question means should I end the IRA and pay the tax by removing the cash value from the account and then acquiring physical gold and silver, I don't know what the benefit to the individual would be. You then own less gold and silver because a portion of your savings would go off in income tax.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Now, so hopefully, Hell Digger, that helped you out a little bit. That was,
But call us and write us in. And believe me, folks, I believe the questions mean more than the answers, because great questions will lead to great answers.
Right.
And there are no dumb questions. The original definition of dumb just means unspoken. So there are dumb questions, the ones that you guys didn't bring up. Bring them up. Learning is part of this. What have you invested in something you didn't really understand and you knew you didn't understand it? You didn't invest in that. You wanted a full understanding. Before you go buy a home, you're going to ask, what's the schools like, right? You want to understand what you're committing to. So please bring us your questions. That's the only way we can really help you.
Right. Good point.
Yeah.
Good point. Okay, let me check and see. Okay, so thanks for answering the question. So, let's just with that being the case, let's just point people colonialmetals.group.com. Of course, links in the description there, and the number, as you can see, right underneath Paul, right where you got. I actually covered you up, but numbers right there where you can call. And so colonialmetals.group.com is where you can find out more, and that's where you can actually go through this service here to connect with Paul and get questions answered, as well as speak to his team there. And so for those who might be new coming across this, Paul, give us, I guess, a little bit of a rundown as to any specials opportunities that, people may be able to, get if they, acquire or use your services.
Sure. One, you get us and we give a damn. So that's a positive. We really do. I try to, pass on this passion that I have for helping others amongst everyone who works with us. I tell them, if you're ever struggling connecting to the folks you're talking with, and bring in a picture of your grandma or your grandpa and put it on your desk, because the majority of the folks we work with are retired, and that's who you're trying to help. So you get that. Plus, yes, we offer, you might qualify for a free safe sent to your home. We have two different sizes depending on the dollar amount that you're working with in a cash transaction, that you would then have that gold and silver shipped to your home. And also up to $7,500 in free silver, qualifying off the dollar amount that you're working with.
Okay, interesting. So once again, as always, man, I enjoy presenting the audience with the opportunity to reach out and get their questions answered. And if they feel that it's something for them, then go ahead and take that pathway. Just because as of now, there's more than enough evidence where people know the severity of what's at stake if they don't begin getting their questions answered and taking action. So, as always, Paul, it's great to connect with you, man, and definitely looking forward to having you back on and picking your brain and seeing where you're at and what's happening with everything like that. So, I appreciate you for taking time out your day to join us, and hopefully the audience definitely got some questions answered. And so I'm definitely looking forward to following and continue to work with you guys, man. I appreciate the help you've done for the community. So thank you for
absolutely. Yeah, it's an honor. When your show has it's the greatest name, Rethinking the Dollar. And then think, why do I have to rethink the dollar? It's because you need to rethink the government.
Right.
And then you think, well, what can I do about the government? Not much. So rethink the dollar and where your dollars are.
Exactly. Great point there. Well, everybody, I appreciate you for blessing us with your presence this afternoon. If you've enjoyed this, hit that thumbs up button. Also, take this video, share it with family and friends, give them something to consider, something to think about. And that's the least that we all can do to try to educate more people and get them plugged into what's really happening. And beyond the presidential debate in a couple hours now, you won't hear anything relevant to this subject matter here. You're going to hear about the surface level problems and how they can fix it. But then once again, as you saw from that number of that 34 plus trillion and counting, it's nothing they can do. So it's up to you individually to take action, educate yourself, and act accordingly. So once again, thanks for joining us. And I will catch you guys later. As always, Paul, I appreciate you, my friend. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. God bless you and everyone who's watching.
Appreciate it.